Greetings. Welcome to the sesquicentennial edition of the Curmudgeon in the Cellar. Can't believe I've done, well, I've done 150 of these numbered ones, and there's about 10 or 12 others, so I don't know how many I've really done, but I know I've done 150 numbered ones. Now, I know the commercials are usually at the end, but I have a new sponsor, and I don't have a file. I don't have a digital file, so I'm going to talk about him, the company. Whoops, there we go. Ralpartha Legacy. And they can be found at ralparthalegacy.com. They are the old Ralpartha Chaos line. A gentleman I know has taken that over, separated it out of Iron Wind. And they not only have all the old Chaos line, they have a lot of the old individual big pieces, special pieces, monsters, etc. And it was just announced this week that they've also reached an agreement with Thunderbolt Mountain Miniatures to put out Tom Meyer's line of figures, including his absolutely amazing Arthurian line. You should go look on their website, Ralpartha Legacy, and check it out. Those are some of the best sculptings that Tom ever made. Now, we have a lot of things to get to tonight, and only a normal amount of time to do it. So, oops, that page is out of order. Got a lot of pages tonight. That's the problem. All right. So, if you see any extra light there behind me reflecting, that's our downstairs Christmas tree. We have Christmas trees all all over the house, and this is the downstairs, and this is a traditional Swedish tree. It's artificial, obviously, but it's straw ornaments and tin candle holders with candles, which we don't light, so we have muted white lights in it, and we have straw ornaments, and we have a Swedish star on the top. That's that side of my family. Okay, first comment was +1 on the joy of struggling to survive and advance as a character. Thank you. Isn't it amazing how we've made our own rating system? Everybody else uses stars. We use pluses on our dice roll. We wish pluses on each other. We have our own little secret, weird, inner joke language. Okay, now, I did, as I recall, I told you I was going to do a game for the guys in Britain. And so I did. And I can't remember what I told you. I don't remember what I said. I don't remember what I told you about this game last week. So I'm going to read you a couple of comments they have for a greater purpose. It was the most amusing time, very enjoyable with the amount of X-Forces. We were all veterans. Playing the conversation was definitely entertaining. Thanks for giving up your time and letting us join in the Wheel of Blame. Thanks for running the game for us Brits. Really enjoys it. Broke up our lockdown and the Q&A after. Learned a lot. Yeah, we talked for a long time. Tim, the game on Friday was great. The more I think about it, the more special it was to have me. I think you should try recording your games and posting them on YouTube. I know you don't see the point in watching others play D&D, but others will. Well, yeah, that's why I'm a little squeamish about it. They like to see how different DMs do it and steal ideas, best form of flattery. You have a style that is not seen much anymore. The game has moved to be about character building and combat. The art of problem solving, the players having to think their way through, is being lost. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. This all leads up to this. Um, had a lot of fun doing that. I've been approached by a few other people. I've decided that maybe at the end of this month, certainly in January, I'm going to run a couple of these games a month for $50, period, total. 7 people maximum, 4 people minimum. And the only reason I say 4 minimum is that the game won't last nearly as long. I don't care how it gets paid. If individuals are going to do it, I'm going to say it's $8 a head and you can save $6, but I've decided to do it. Cheryl's been after me to, hey, get a side gig going. We're all locked down. And I'm glad to do it. I've had a lot of fun doing this. I have access to a commercial level Zoom, very wide bandwidth, excellent communication. We had a great time. I can take many more players. I'm thinking about perhaps watching observers and muting them so they can't say anything anyway. Plus, keeping out all the clutter and the background noise. So watch for that soon. I'll post it on my Facebook page. I'll talk more about it again next week, but I'm definitely going to do the theater of the mind. We're going to play the Wheel of Blame, and we're all going to have a real good time in this time of being shut in. And if I get enough demand sooner, I'll run it sooner rather than later in the month. Maybe I'll run it in a week or 10 days, whatever. Okay, now here's a really hard question. What was your favorite Dragon Magazine article? Please include why. Well, you said article, so that rules out the Fritz Leiber and the Elsbrag de Camp and the Gardner Fox pieces and the Harry Fisher pieces that I got to publish. At first, publishing those fiction pieces met a lot of resistance, and then people came to enjoy them. Um, Geez, that's like asking a 40-year midwife of all the babies you birthed, which one was your favorite? I really can't pick one. I'm sorry. I really can't. Um, I published a lot of great stuff. I published a few that I've gone back and looked at and cringed, but it was the best I had at the time. And in a couple of cases, the individual that wrote it became a much better writer later on. So that's probably the favorite thing I did there was give a lot of writers their first break, just like I gave a lot of artists their first exposure. So I'm really sorry I can't answer that. Tell us how you became the editor for TSR. Okay, you must be a late arrival to the Curmudgeon in the Cellar. I became the editor for TSR because I had the temerity to call long distance information, get the name for this Gygax fellow who wrote Chainmail and who's the company was in Lake Geneva, so I called Lake Geneva, and sure enough, there he was. And I waited until late on like a Saturday night when the rates were the lowest. And I called him up and we talked for an hour and a half and we developed a friendship. And it just kind of came together, a convergence. He was talking about his plans. I was in university and college. I had a child, and I was figuring out where I wanted to go in the year and a half I had left, or so, 2 years rough. I don't remember, and because I did an extra quarter in there somewhere. Anyway, he, I got the first 3 little brown books, or the 3 little books. We call it the BBB little brown books, LBBs, because it came in a brown box. They weren't brown, but that was it. And I bought a set and I took it back to after we'd been friends a few months, and I came to Gen Con. I bought a set and I took it back, and they were terribly written. And I told him that. And the kid says, well, we need an editor up here pretty bad. And I said, well, I'm in journalism classes, so I think we can do this. So I went got a specialized major. I went to a board of professors and presented a curriculum, explained why I wanted to do it, and basically prepared myself to walk into TSR as their editor and to take the strategic review and make it bigger. I had some experience here, some experience there, college newspaper, college yearbook, that kind of stuff. And then I tailored the rest of my education to fit in there. And so that's how I became the editor. I talked my way into it by telling him his rules as written stunk. All right, now I got to remember what came next, because I try to do these in the order you guys post them. Usually the newest first. Oh, okay. I'll go to this page. The long nightmare is over. Oh wait, this isn't a Cthulhu channel. Never mind. On a serious note, thank you for leaving politics out of your channel. I suspect you and I differ in our political views. That does not matter at the game table. I game as an enjoyable and social diversion for a few hours. Absolutely, we might. You would know better than I, because you've heard me spout, but I've not heard you. That helps. Yeah, I've had to bite my tongue so badly. It's like me and Beck teaching. I had to leave all my politics at the door, actually in the parking lot. I didn't want to get into it with teachers either. And in my own house, in my own basement, since I moved to Cincinnati and got together with the first gaming group that I got together with were the guys down at Parth. I had Tom Meyer, I had Chuck Crane. Let's see, who else came out here back then? Chuck's friend, the tanker. I'll think of his name in a minute. Terry Hauk. And our first rule from the very first time we used to play down here, John, yeah, and Rich Smethurst, and some of the old Partha people. We left religion and politics at the door, even though we were probably most of us fairly consistent in our politics. We left them at the door, and that's my rule. Has been always forever. John Kellner, Chuck's friend. Yeah, I find it makes for much better games. There's guys I talk to and I'm civil with at the conventions that I couldn't be more diametrically opposed to their political views unless I was on another plane. I much prefer your style of D&D to the WotC version. Thank you for being the elder statesman of our hobby. Well, I'm certainly just glad to be alive. I turned 72 in a few weeks, and the shoulder's healing, so that's going good. It's going to be a while. Yeah, elder statesman is something you get when you're the last one to die. When I came into TSR, I was like 26, and they were all a few years older than me, and so I was the youngest youngest there. Then there was Rob and Terry and what have you. But I was definitely younger than Gary and Brian. My car's still alive, and he might actually be a little older than I am. But as the first employee, I get to claim the TSR Old Guard thingy. As to the WotC version, I heard several apocryphal tales several years ago about fourth edition combat being like a giant pinball game on the table, except it took you 4 hours to fight a half a dozen orcs, and we talk more about combat here later tonight. Yeah, I'm all about not getting bogged down in minutia and trying to remember how many dice you got to roll and all that. Let's see. Excuse me. You've described how you do small group combat before. But how do you run mass combat? I don't. I don't do mass combat. I wrote well, I didn't write. Well, I wrote some of the Swords and Spells rules that Gary we published as the last final D&D book to take it to the mass battles level. I don't play that anymore. I don't have the figures to play it anymore. And so for that reason, I never did. We did a few at Lake Geneva as chainmail battles in the campaigns that were going on up there. The Kingdom of Greyhawk and Rob's Kingdom and some of the others. And we played them up there. I played mass fantasy battles here in Lake Geneva, or here, no, not I'm out of Lake Geneva, here in Cincinnati for a few years after I moved here. But I haven't played in that campaign for that long, but it's still going on. And it has a set of rules. The last time I saw them, typed punch to fit in binders that were this thick. So you had to have one of those court binders or one of those deed binders that had a 2-part hinge. I'll tell you how I run big parties, because sometimes I'll mention the fact that I used to run groups of 10, 11, 13, 14, 15 players, because I was the only DM in college and it was just catching on and everybody wanted a piece of the action. And I have run large games at cons since I came back in the mid to late aughts and started running things. And I did this a couple of times when I was caught short of new adventures to play. I just do a thing about, I go around the table and I say, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? By the time I get over here, I've got answers, and I keep everybody involved. In fact, sometimes it's easier to keep a large group fully involved than it is a small, because the small group's so small, you keep going around and people begin to think you're poking at them. You're prodding them to play, to play, to play. All right, let's see what else. No, don't do massive. Now I just I'm a minis guy, and if I was going to do massive battles, I'd want to do it with figures. Okay, since you showed us the cute plushy Otyug or Neo Otyug on the shelf, I thought it was a perfect composting recycling machine in the D&D ecology. All right, now he goes on to have the perfect career criminal, outlaw, magic user, rogue class that's got some obscure gross references, so trigger warning. I was thinking maybe make a class specializing in gradual herd immunity and disease resistance, where characters go through a series of obstacle courses in some kind of G.G. Allen Otyug habitat, or maybe South Park Lemmy Winks. It sounds to me like you got a whole different game going here that you might look at pulling out and playing as a combination role-playing board game, because there's a lot of those kinds of games out right now that are quite good. Let's see what's on the next. This is going to be a surprise for me too. I've seen them all before. Okay, this one says that I prefer to call what the one commenter called intersectionals woke scolds instead, so as not to confuse their antics with the legitimate social science theory of intersectionality. I blame Twitter for annihilating any nuance in these subjects. It's mostly a lot of sophomoric teenagers who really need to read more or take a philosophy class, who end up having their unnuanced takes broadcast and amplified over social media. I have confidence they'll grow out of it. In the meantime, I just ignore anything Watsy says. Okay. Woke scolds. I'm not into the nuances because I don't publish for widespread publication anymore, so I don't follow all the latest nuances of the latest current buzzwords. Okay. I'm going to kill this topic right here, right now. Surely the Morris dancer is the bard. Dancing, playing the accordion, telling tales, and walloping sticks. And as I replied on my own comment thread, no fucking way. If you choose to have something like a Morris dancer running around, carrying on, that's fine. Apparently, that's part of your culture, and swell. But I really don't think that would play in this hemisphere. No. So no more. Done. All right, now segueing. He's working on a random encounter of a band of traveling juggalos. Well, I had no idea what they were, and I looked them up, and they're Clown Posse fans, and they're nutso schizos. And again, if that's something you want to work into your campaign, that's swell. However, chaotic good is a little generous. At best, I would call them chaotic neutral with tendencies for evil because they seem to like to beat people up a punch and get very physical. So, all right. Then they're more for campaign flavor. Okay, when the group is ready for a break from monster slaying, part of being a good DM is finding ways to annoy your players without actually alienating them, in my opinion. Well, sure. It's one of the few pleasures we get, the few honest pleasures we get as DMs. Because sometimes we feel guilty when the party croaks themselves because maybe we were a little too hard, or some character croaks himself because maybe we were a little too hard. But annoying them? Nah, that's fair. All right. Here we are arguing about who is the invincible overlord, RE, the city state. And you're using the description in there, most terrible majesty, the invincible overlord, yada da da da, most puissant, all that. That's common Middle Ages diplomatic bullshit. One of the little pissant German states, before they were unified, sitting in his 3 mountaintops with his 3 chateaus, would get this kind of stuff too. It was just flattery. It was just lard being shoveled onto people to grease them up. It doesn't mean that. No, we're not going there. Yeah, and you can play them however you want to play them. If ever you do it. That was the whole point of Judges Guild. Judges Guild was, hey, look at all these neat things we did. You can play them the way we did them, or you can take them apart and play them however you want. I know my group spent probably four sessions in the Sunstone Mountains, and that was a side adventure in the city state. All right, let's see what else is here. Oh no, this is, yeah. Well, then it gets a little. I don't even know why I copied this part of it. It's a little grotesque. A lot of woke people on Twitter are claiming D&D is racist. I've tried explaining that the races in D&D are different species, not really races. What are my thoughts? Well, again, you must be, you might be a new viewer. In all my association with TSR and the game and the writing I've done since with other companies, for other companies, I never personified any of the old harem scarum boogeyman type monsters as being some race. I also hated in an English class in high school when we had to look for all the symbolism in novels, which I felt ruined a good read. So maybe I'm naive. Maybe I'm dense on that. Nah, probably not. If you feel that orcs represent some other people, don't play them. If you think long and hard enough about it, you can demonize any bipedal race, from monkeys to anything else you make up in a fantasy world. And I guess you can figure out which one's which. I simply don't buy into the whole outrage and everything about it. I never saw it there. I never knowingly wrote anything into any monster, anything I did at DSR with any. I don't have any biases as to race or color or anything like that. I never have. I wasn't raised that way. Okay. These folks remind me of the kid at university who read a book by Marx, and then for weeks, everything he said had a reference to Marx. Then it was Rand. Then it was some other author. Yes, I know. They're just picking up a trumpet and blowing a new tune every week. What about making a historical medieval board game? Do you have any ideas? I'm thinking of a square grid, dual-sided game board with plastic miniatures, cardboard terrain pieces, sandbox style, all in one. Well, this little paragraph makes me think of Game of Kings, Kickstarter, very good games, up to 6 players can play. On a medieval armies are abstracts because you're busy collecting commerce and commodities. If you want, there's Kingmaker. There's other games that have this feel to them that use Richard Berg's, who I know. I just a couple of months ago found out he died recently. He invented the commands and colors movement systems that have successfully been used in several different games, modified slightly and successfully used. You got to have something different than all that, better than all that, or combine all that in a way that nobody's ever done before. Historical medieval board game is going to be a harder sell, and therefore sell smaller. So that's something you want to kickstart. And it better be a really good idea to get it successfully funded on Kickstarter. And I'm not knocking your idea or anything, but that's what I see. Oh Lord, what is this part of? Oh no, we're going there last. What was the origin of Psionics? My idea, because the early game had brain moles, and the mind flayer was in a strategic review, so it was an official new monster in the game. And there was another third creature, I believe, that could literally reduce your mind to pudding. And I told Gary that was grotesquely unfair. There was no way we could fight back against that. And I also knew that Gary was, as I was, still am, and to an extent, a great fan of Doctor Strange. And Doctor Strange was all about psionics. And so, let's see, was it one of the supplements, Eldritch Wizardry? I don't know. I published a psionic system that was meant to be a check at the end of character generation that was supposed to be like 3 chances in 1200, some ridiculous, that you might have the receptive gene for psionics. And of course, everybody in the world and their brother and their sisters and their mothers all had psionics within a few weeks of us publishing that. So it got completely out of whack. I know lots and lots and lots of people never used them. That would be solely up to the campaign. And it would have to have a DM that wanted to use them. And I don't blame you if you don't. It's okay. I'm a much better rules writer now. And no, I'm not going to rewrite the rules. I have no interest in rewriting the rules. I stumbled and broke my shin on that one once. You have mentioned playing micro armor games and having a large collection you donated to the Patton Museum. Yeah, it's the George S. Patton Memorial Museum in Fort Chiriaco, California. What rules did you and Jay Trampier play with? And was your collection mostly GHQ, CNC, or others? Well, actually, we used War Games Research Group infantry combat rules. I'm trying to think of the precise title. 1936 to 1952 or something like that. It was the English would get very precise in their rules when they wrote rules back then, and they were marvelous rules. I love them. If I was to play today, I'd probably play with them again. Of course, I know them very well because we played. Oh God, I don't know how many hundreds of hours. We made slight modifications on distance to fit them on to increase the scale of the game, but very little. They were in a soft bound, pebbled red cover stapled through, and then of course we had dozens of Xeroxes of the various charts and tables. It's just interesting. I did a Zoom with some guys from the Tramp Facebook page. They didn't ask what. Was it mostly GHQ, CNC, or others? 75% was a mix of GHQ and CNC, pretty much right down the middle. For one thing, I got freebies to review. For another, I bought several collections, or more accurately, aggregations of people that were getting out of it. So there'd be 40 Shermans and 30 Mark IIIs, and I acquired them like that. I had some that were some old, they were cast in resin and had piano wire barrels, which were lethal on your fingernails, underneath your fingernails. And then I had stuff from Australia, and I had stuff from England, and probably, without sounding like I'm bragging, if there was stuff made somewhere else in that scale that was close enough, because the English was kind of smallish, they were 1 to 300. I probably had some there because I made a point to get some. So I had a very wide, but maybe not a lot from some of those countries. I had a lot from Australia. Made a big order because we were doing business with Australia at the time. Abstract comment, pardon me. I need to oil the throat again. How long have I been talking? Oh, much too long. All right, gotta quit meandering. Abstract combat is definitely my preference as well. I just prefer to abstract away different factors from other games, or different factors from other. Okay, I use weapons versus armor class attack adjustments. This is what I preach. Everything that you do that works for you in your campaign, in your players, and they're happy with it, it's correct. I don't mean to sound like I'm giving you short shrift. I'm giving you a non-patronizing attaboy. You're doing it right. Or attagirl. You're doing it right. Definitely seems a measure easier to both create and play a character with D&D, which is a very good design. And he's comparing the playability of the abstraction in D&D versus GURPS and Hero. And while they are good games, they require a higher degree of detail in character generation and gameplay. You're right, they are. And if that's what you're into, hey, that's cool. Yep, that's cool. If you know, there's so many good systems out there. Good for you, good for me, not good for me, good for you, good for them. Whatever. Find one you like and play. The whole thing is playing. It's all about playing. And nowadays, when we're all, stuck with our little bubble, our circle of friends, play online. I play every week with my friends online, and I play online solo probably a couple times a day. Scythe, um, Ticket to Ride. Um, okay, how popular were druids during testing? Well, there's a very well-known druid in the village of Hamlet module named Jeru of the Ash Staff. And in the writing of that module and the playtesting, I was the druid. That was my character, though it was not called that then. At the time, he was simply called the Druid of the Grove. And on the nights I couldn't or didn't make it, they made up more limerick type verses to a ballad about how much fun my druid character had in the woods with what. So they were well received in that regard. When we first tested them, the druid as a class, all written up, came from one of the guys that played in my first group down in Carbondale. And when I got them, they were so well detailed that I was immediately taken with wow. And I took him into Gary, and I said, Gary, I know you've been researching druids, because he was looking at putting druids into the game. And because it was a favorite interest of his. And he said, can I take it? Yeah, he took it home over the weekend, whatever, came back and said, this is great. This is our druid. And with very minor alterations. So we were excited to get a druid because we felt a druid was a character from mythology and fictional tales that would be very playable. And it has been. So we were keen to get them out there because we thought other people would enjoy them too. Okay, now this is another unending thing. Why did I do this? Okay, I know why. Because this person makes some grotesque misconceptions. And this is why I don't name whoever wrote these things, because that way I'm free to answer them in any way I like. Okay, so now he wants my opinion about multi-class characters, and I've always said many times before, and I wrote a lot. I wrote a lot on dragonsfoot.org on my thread over there that I don't like them, except in the bard, because of the bard's unique druidic connection. And that's the only reason. Because you got to be a bard before you can be a druid. Because you have to do, we posited that you had to develop those memory skills as a bard to have your brain trained enough to have enough compartments in your mind to do all the things that druids do. And so now he goes on to say that Gary wanted people to draw their own conclusions and ideas about their own imaginary worlds of what magic and light, and could hardly care about which of those two schools of thought his customers chose. Now, okay, number one, surprisingly enough, Gary never looked at the people, the players, as customers. They were the players. They were the gamers, never the customers. Brian might have looked at them like that on the spreadsheet. Gary did not like the idea of multi-classing any more than he liked the idea of Superman using two arms, whatever. Gary very much gave them his world and said, here, play in it. As any parent, he tried to control where it went, just as any parent tries to control the development of their offspring, their creation. So, knowing that, no, he didn't want them to do that. He thought, and okay, it was his ego. Okay, we're looking at this how many years ago? 45, 47? No, I almost said something that got me in trouble. If you want to talk about, if you want to try and justify multi-class characters, yeah, good luck. We'll talk about that at another time. And you want to know why? Well, think about this. Why big characters, badass characters, can't use wands or staffs. Give Arnold Schwarzenegger in the first Conan movie a sword that shoots lightning bolts. 4 scenes and it's over. Too much power. Blows the plot. Well, there's an ongoing plot playing role-playing games. Every campaign has its own plot. That's why you don't do it. Give a paladin? Oh, no. No, those guys got enough of a stick up their butt. Okay, and now you want to disagree with me about the final boss and who it is. And I admitted in one of my videos and playing as an NPC being the TP Cuck. No, that's not it. In that adventure that I wrote, there is a mausoleum in a necropolis, a necropolis type chamber, mostly natural grotto. And it's an ossuary. There's row upon row carved into the walls of niches, all the thigh bones, all the hip bones, all the knee bones, okay? And there's a vast wall covered with skulls. And I mean, there's some are crumbling, some are not, you know, some are relatively new. And there's a beautiful set of wizard robes adorning a skeleton holding a staff without a head. They're diametrically opposed to inside the necropolis, there's a mausoleum, 14 feet wide, 25 feet, you know, I don't remember exactly. And it is surrounded by 8 translucently glowing pillars. Immediately, the party goes, and this happened time and time again when I was playtesting this. The party goes and goes, oh, well, where's that skeleton's head? because there's no dust on the robes. They can sense if there's a power, whatever. It depends on what they ask. And they go and they find the head, the one that's different than all the rest because it has gilded eye sockets. And rather than speak to dead, they stick it on the skeleton, who then crumbles to dust. The pillars quit glowing. The force field goes down. And out comes the lich that's been imprisoned there for centuries, who's got a major heart-on, major anger. Beep. I don't have a delay. He's got a major case for being imprisoned there all this time, and he rides a nightmare. He's not the final boss. He's just the worst thing that can happen to you in one of my adventures. You don't have to go in there. There's no reason to free him. It's much easier to speak with dead than to risk that. Nobody did. One or two groups didn't put the head on and went on. But most of them just like rats to cheese, or actually, if you use mouse traps, mice to good old plain white Wonder Bread and flour. So no, I don't go into big bad evil guys. I don't run that kind of game. I don't have that kind of thing in the Wheel of Blame. The Wheel of Blame is just about all I'm doing right now. Now, if conditions were to radically change, meaning somebody offered me a stupid amount of money to run a game on a campaign every week, then I'd be running a campaign. Otherwise, I'm just doing what I'm having fun with. I'd have fun if I was running a campaign, but only if I was being paid. Like I said, my 72nd birthday comes in January, so I don't know how much more I got to give away. Don't forget about Theater in the Mind. It'll be on my Facebook page. It'll be on Tabletop Events. It'll be under NTRPG. Maybe role playing, but NTRPG, that's the North Texas Role Playing Game Convention. And they list games. That's where they'll be listed. And we'll, if you are interested, you and your group want to play, whatever, contact me on Facebook. Private message me. And I'll be glad, whatever. I'm looking for something to keep me from being bored to tears. You're looking for something new. Maybe we can help each other. In the meantime, I think that's everything. Dodata Govi. Oh, hello. I'm still figuring out when this thing starts. Welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought Psionics to the game to attack that wizard brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Tight with tramp under a tree, high as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Come on.